we actually do here.
So I'll never leave here.
Well, it's been a tough morning on all of us.
Why for you?
Apple TV Plus is that one streaming service that a lot of people don't have. Despite the huge amount of money backing up the service has never really been a must-have. In the age of too many pointless streaming services, most people generally gravitate to one of three: Netflix, Amazon, or Disney. If you're someone who has Apple TV, the general belief is that you probably have some money to spare. I mean, I've never heard of someone who watches exclusively Apple TV and doesn't have Netflix or Disney too. The reason is that despite Apple TV genuinely having a lot of good stuff on its service, there's never really been a massive hit that people had to go out of their way to see. Ted Lasso is certainly the closest show to that. A lot of people love this show, and I'm sure some people even bought Apple TV just to watch this show. But one really wholesome show isn't enough to sell a service for most people, and truthfully a lot of people will just instead find other means of watching that one show. It probably doesn't help that Apple TV's big show that was meant to be their big hit, The Morning Show, never really took off with viewers. If you've not watched it, it's basically the most expensive soap opera ever made, with some occasionally awful dialogue, but generally good acting. The only reason I'd recommend watching it is because of Steve Carell, and he's not even in the show anymore. The point is, Apple TV Plus isn't the biggest streaming service out there right now. It's no surprise that the service might be merging with Paramount Plus in the hopes of gaining more money. Its most popular show is finished, and its attempted subscriber drawer isn't that great, so most people don't have much reason to get Apple TV Plus. And that's a shame because Apple do have some genuinely good stuff on their service. Case in point in the show that we're going to be talking about today, Severance, one of the weirdest, most interesting and compelling shows that I've ever seen. Severance follows Mark S., played by the always memorable Adam Scott. Adam Scott is one of those actors that you don't see in a lot of things, but when you do, he's always a highlight of that thing. I remember watching Step Brothers as a kid, and like anyone who has watched that film, I loved it. Despite being the two-hander between Will Ferrell and John C. Reilly, I always remembered the asshole Derek played by Adam Scott. The character was so clearly a dick, but Adam Scott injected enough charisma into the character that you always liked seeing him on screen and could understand why a lot of the other characters in the film loved talking to him. The only other major performance that I've seen from him was in the show Parks and Recreation, where he played the much less cool Ben Wyatt. Adam Scott joined the show later than most of the primary cast members, but became an integral fixture on the show. Despite giving great performances on both of these shows, I was interested to see how he would fare with a much more serious role. And Severance is a serious show that asks quite a lot from Adam Scott and other members of the cast, as he basically has to play two characters in this show. In Severance, Mark leads a group of office workers who have had a surgical procedure, which we actually get to see, something that made me a little squeamish, that has led to their memories being surgically split between the Mark who works at the office and the Mark who goes home every evening. Adam Scott, through something as simple as his posture and inflection of his voice, is able to have the audience easily discern between the two characters. In the world of this story, Severance is a very controversial issue. Many are outraged that the procedure even exists, and unsurprisingly most people refuse to ever get the procedure. Mark is even a little ostracised for agreeing to the procedure. So why did he? Well, the truth is, Mark is very depressed. The Mark who gets to go home every evening has lost his wife in a car accident and is clearly unable to deal with that fact, so he chooses to run away from his problems. And the only way that he can think to deal with it is to not exist for most of the day. Adam Scott infuses this version of Mark with a combination of never-ending sadness and deep-rooted anger at the world. Mark seems to live only because he can and not because he wants to. Even when one of his co-workers, who he is not allowed to see, shows up at a restaurant that he goes to and tells him of a conspiracy involving the place they work, he seems disinterested and apathetic. It's only when he discovers that there is truth to this conspiracy does he actually start to take action, and even then, that's after he tries his hardest to ignore what's happening. But at the end of the day, Mark is a good person, and he can't ignore what's happening at his work. This inner good guy becomes more apparent when we see the Mark who works at Lumon. This is a Mark none the wiser of his wife's death, so he is more cheerful and compassionate to those around him. His heart isn't burdened by that knowledge. However, he is quite similar to the Mark of the outside world. This Mark is essentially trapped in the offices of Lumon and has grown to accept that as his fate. But when the new girl, Helly, shows up and starts questioning everything and pointing out how weird everything is, Mark does his absolute best to ignore it and just carry on with the mysterious work of sorting scary feeling numbers into boxes. It's only when he sees how much Helly is hurting and the negative effect Lumon is having on the rest of his colleagues that he decides to step up. Both versions of Mark are great protagonists for the show, and whilst I clearly haven't seen everything that Adam Scott has been in, this is definitely the best performance that I've seen from him. Unlike Mark, the rest of the office workers we only really get to see in their innie mode. Innie being used to describe the versions of the person trapped in Lumon, and Outie being the ones that get to live their lives outside Lumon. Helly, played brilliantly by Britt Lauer, is the new girl that comes to the office to replace Petey, who leaves Lumon under suspicious circumstances. She takes an instant disliking to being stuck in Lumon and does everything in her power to escape, which causes issues for the other characters, especially Mark, as he is the team leader. She is brash and rebellious, and every effort to control her only backfires. She is the total opposite of the few glimpses that we get of her Outie. I love the relationship that she fosters with Mark, one that begins with contempt turns to love as the two get closer to one another. However, the real standout of the main cast has to be John Turturro as Irving. I am as familiar with this man's filmography as I am with Adam Scott's, which is to say, not very familiar. But on the rare occasions where he has popped up in something that I'm watching, he has been a real highlight. I know him best as that one guy from the Michael Bay Transformers movies. I love this character, and his scene where he's under the Transformer scrotum has been forever etched into my memory.
I am directly below the enemy scrotum.
He also gave a good performance in The Batman as Carmine Falcone. He's a good actor, but I wasn't prepared for how good of a performance he was going to deliver in this show. His performance as Irving is fantastic. He is soft-spoken and reserved, a complete inverse of his iconic performance in Transformers. Irving's voice rarely rises above a whisper, and he has given himself completely over to the pseudo-religious teachings of Lumon. Yes, this is a very weird show where not a lot makes sense, and even by the end of this season, a lot has been left unanswered. I could genuinely see the show introducing something like aliens, or having the characters converse with God. That's how strange and unusual parts of the show is. But regardless, Irving is a very interesting character, as he is the complete opposite of Helly. He would die for Lumon and seems to get immense pleasure out of serving Lumon. It's only after his budding romance with Bert, played by the always great Christopher Walken, that he starts to realise that there's more to life than Lumon. I'm not going to deep dive into every character, mainly because we know so little about a lot of them, so I wouldn't have much to say, but I do want to highlight a few of the other characters. Dylan, played by Zach Cherry, provides a lot of the comic relief in the show, but like the others who have been severed, he fantasises about the outside world and doesn't hesitate to help Helly and Mark with escaping Lumon. Milchick, played superbly by Tremel Tillman, is one of the creepiest characters that I've ever seen in a TV show. He talks in such a calming voice with this constant smile on his face. He represents the fakeness of Lumon and the hidden darkness within. I like that we get to see brief flashes of the human under the facade with Milchick every now and then, and Tremel Tillman does a fantastic job with this three-dimensional performance of a very intriguing and memorable character. Like Milchick, Mrs. Kerbal, played by Patricia Arquette, is very creepy, but also like Milchick, you can see the human underneath slip through. We're initially under the belief that Mrs. Kerbal and Milchick are the masterminds of Lumon, but we soon discover that they don't really have any power and are just as much of a cog in the machine as Mark. While she's not severed, Patricia Arquette does provide a dual performance in this show, as Mrs. Kerbal basically goes undercover as Mark's neighbour so that she can keep a close eye on him. Even outside of the company, Lumon still has its hand wrapped around Mark. What's interesting about Mrs. Kerbal is that she seems to be torn between doing her job and her actual genuine affection for Mark. I don't know why she seems to actually care for Mark, but it's another facet to her character to add some dimensionality. She's by no means my favourite character in the show, but she is an interesting one. And I am curious to see how her character develops as well as the reveals for her character in future seasons. Unsurprisingly, the show focuses a lot more on the happenings within Lumon. It is the great central mystery of the series and the thing driving the plot forward, but we do get to see the outside world too, as there are people like Petey on the outside trying to reveal Lumon's secrets to the world. One character that we see a lot of outside of Lumon is Devon, Mark's sister. His wife's death may have sapped his strength, but the little he has left is certainly thanks to his sister. Despite having her own life, she always makes time for her brother and never gives up on him. The two are clearly very close, and it often seems like she's Mark's only ally in the outside world. She doesn't get as much screen time as I wish she would, but with her getting more and more dragged into Mark's world, I wouldn't be surprised if she played a larger role in Season 2. The story of Severance is one that I won't spoil here, largely because I actually don't fully understand the story of Severance. It's a mystery that is still yet to be fully solved. What do the numbers mean? Why are they sorting them into boxes? Why do the numbers feel scary? What are optics up to? Why is Lumon so weird? Why are there goats in some of the offices? We don't know. And yet, by developing the show's characters and answering certain questions we have, Severance's first season has been incredible. One of my favourite parts about this show is the direction and cinematography. We've all had those moments when we've watched a show or a film and gone, wow, that's a great shot. You probably didn't understand why the shot was good, but your eyes and brain came together in unison to make it clear to you that it was. Severance is packed to the brim with shots like this. This is one of those shows where you can tell the people involved were talented and actually knew what they were doing. They had a vision, and not only that, they had the skill to actually execute that vision. Ben Stiller is a very famous man, but after watching this show, I would not mind if I never saw him act again. because he's an incredible director, as is Ethan McArdle. Both of them were perfect for this show, and Severance would not have been as popular as it was without them. They knew what they wanted and they clearly got it. The acting in this show is fantastic, and the framing and lighting of shots is some of the best that I've ever seen. The fact that they could make people working at an office cubicle visually interesting is a testament to their ability. The most shockingly great part of this show is its opening credit sequence. Usually when TV shows have opening credit sequences, you just skip them. You've got a busy day and you want to binge the episodes as fast as you can. Severance's opening is so incredible that I literally only skipped it once, and that was because I really had to for time. I watch a lot of anime, so I'm constantly bombarded by opening credit sequences. I've seen so many amazing opening credit sequences, so it takes a lot to genuinely impress me. Severance is one of the best opening credit sequences that I've ever seen. It's no surprise that Severance won an Emmy for Outstanding Main Title Design in 2022. I mean, just look at it. It's creepy, it's weird, but it's also clearly of high quality. Basically, it's the perfect opening for Severance and gets you intrigued before the episode even begins. The piano music for the opening too really elevates the visuals, and it's all just so fantastic. This show is great, and I'm genuinely sad that you can't buy this show on DVD or Blu-ray, because I really want to get this show physically, as my free Apple TV Plus subscription shall soon sadly expire. Severance is a show that you should drop everything to go see. It's one of the best first seasons that I've seen to a show ever, and I'm really crossing my fingers in the hope that Severance doesn't become another Lost or Westworld, because that would just break my heart. Is Severance the best show on Apple TV Plus? Well, that's ultimately up to you. Let me know what you think of Severance in the comments below, and also don't be afraid to give me some Apple TV Plus recommendations whilst you're down there. I'd also appreciate you giving this video a like whilst you're there. It really boosts this video in the YouTube algorithm, and also be sure to subscribe. I'm aiming to hit 1,000 subscribers before the end of 2024. It's quite a tall order, but I don't think it's impossible. Thank you for watching this video, and I hope to see you in the next one. Bye bye.